A great pleasure in welcoming the immortal Stevie Wright, ex-Easybeats and Stevie Wright Band. Welcome to Adelaide, Stevie.
Oh, what a fantastic welcome. Thanks, Gary.
You're welcome, most surely. First of all, what brings you to Adelaide?
Well, Gary, it's a most important occasion of my life, actually. It's, I suppose a lot of people perhaps thought that the Easybeats get together again was, like quite something in that, but to me it was only secondary to that thing which I'm sort of involved with myself in the 80s, you know what I mean? I'm still a progressive musician and a songwriter and have progressive musical ideas and sort of and think that I'd like to sort of gain a foothold really in the marketplace in the 80s and relating back to the 60s, which a lot of people seem to do these days, into that nostalgia thing, but relating back to, as far as Adelaide's concerned, Adelaide always frightened me in the old days because I'd come to Adelaide with the Easybeats and that, and the audience at that time, as perhaps a lot of people will tell you, used to pick up most quickly, perhaps out of any Australian audience, on the latest, not so much trends, but musical fashions and intricacies that sort of came out of England and perhaps the world at that time. They used to pick up on it first, and we'd come and we, like Easybeats had sort of come to town, they'd come to Adelaide, we're thinking that, we'd picked up on the latest, and there was always some fan in the audience who'd tell us of something sort of more current than sort of we got happening, Yeah. But it was always, I think, the innovator of rock and roll. It's always produced great sort of bands, and I've nearly lost my life a couple of times on sort of in live shows in Adelaide in the past, and that's another reason. But one of the most important reasons is that the entrepreneur or the person that sort of had the spirit to that was motivated into sort of putting this whole thing together, this live Stevie Wright lifetime thing, Easybeats, 70s, what he's got together now, he's a gentleman from Adelaide, and so it all sort of fitted in, and the business deal sort of sounded, or he's sounding legitimate and everything, and he's bright, and the whole sort of setup is thoroughly professional. And to me, it's quite a vibe for me, and my whole band's, just really over the moon about it all.
A lot of people believe that you're from Adelaide originally, but that's not true.
No, I never had the pleasure, actually. They the fair sea that I did emigrate on when I was 10-year-old, I think the bike got a bit too rough for it, and it sort of dropped us off in Melbourne, and that was the first residence I had in Australia. Then later on we moved to Sydney, and I'm still in Sydney. I still can't get out of the place.
Right. So you're in Adelaide for a special concert and doing some recording as well, I understand.
Well, it's as I mentioned before, it's a live album, and it contains the best of that which Stevie Wright was associated with, or is associated with, from Kingdom Come till now. And some video being recorded as well? Video and film, it's all been done in this clip.
Oh, great.
It's quite an honour and an exciting time for me, as you could imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said at the beginning of the program, I think there's a lot of people who regard you as one of the immortals of the Australian rock and roll scene. Very, very popular, of course, in the 60s and 70s with the Stevie Wright Band, and been to England and everything, back to England, rather, with the Easybeats and everything. How was the end of the Easybeats? Got any good memories of the end of the Easybeats?
Well, yeah, the Easybeats tour as a whole... the part you mentioned was, I should say as a whole, was a little bit sort of perturbing in a way, because I put all my energy into sort of the Stevie Wright Band for the previous 12 months before the Easybeats Reformation concert went down, and it kind of separated me a little bit from the band, and it was a pain regarding in that aspect, and also it was like tedious to know that from me working with a band that I'd worked with like previously for 9 months, and to go back with a band that I hadn't worked with for 17 years was quite a traumatic experience. And I didn't know whether everybody was going to cut it. Nobody knew, and we had our goals. We didn't know how it would all go, but it all went rather well. And yes, and the last shows were, I thought, I did feel kind of, like just something really deep inside, something sad, because I knew that was it. Yeah. And that was the last. That it would never go down again. And it was a little sad the last night. I mean, everybody went over the top the very, very last night we played, and I went back to my room depressed a bit.
Yeah.
But then again, I was able to sort of think about and project to these things that are happening now to sort of, to get me out of the depression. And these things are equally as exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, with 20 years plus of rock and roll under your belt, how do you think that the sound of the 80s compares to the 60s and 70s? How has it changed? The fun, the sincerity, the feelings in the songs, the lyrics? Can you sum it up in a few sentences?
Impossible.
We haven't got 3 hours.
No. I think that the 80s is a very depressing period, actually.
In music?
Well, I think the situation in the whole economic structure in the marketplace in the world today, or in Australia today especially, which reflects upon the world situation today, reflects itself also in the music, and there seems to be a depression on at the moment. And usually groups and entertainers, really thrive in depressions because people are looking for an escape, an outlet that's safe if they're wise, and entertainment seems to be that. But I can really testify that after, sort of running my band for 12 months and that there seems to be a, from what I've seen in the past 2 decades, there seems to be a lack in the marketplace of interest, really, and I think it's determined by the dollar or lack of the dollar. But those people that are into it seem to be reflecting back to happier times, and they kind of consider the times that I was involved in, like the 60s with the Easybeats and perhaps the early 70s and that I was involved in too, were more exciting times, and they seem to be trying to recoup that period and incorporate that the spirit of that period into their music these days to provide that sort of vitality that era, that an excitement that era had. Now, to me, that's a bit strange because it's like going backward. And if I purely and solely did that, I'd just be like a nostalgia act, a cabaret act. Yeah. And
here today, gone tomorrow.
Well, you introduced me. Is it immortal? Well, that embarrasses me a little, but I'd say in a spiritual sense or in an ongoing sense, my spiritual needs to keep on going, and I'm thinking, well, look, I've done that in the 60s and I've done that in the 70s, and I need to do something new in the 80s, and yet everybody seems to be going back to the 60s for influence.
Please don't get me wrong, when I said immortal, I meant immortal doesn't mean necessarily the living dead.
Right.
What I meant, I guess, was still evolving, but still around, still doing new exciting things. I mean, every decade that you've been involved in, you've been doing something different with the times.
Well, I think it reflects upon every human being. They get older and they need to keep revitalising themselves, and that's why I chose after sort of getting out of music, and as probably your older listeners would be able to testify to you that they would have heard about the traumatic experiences that I've been through, but I approached a number of sort of job situations in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, and to try to get away from music and absorb new influences and things like that. And I finally came back to music because I could never get on top of it. I could always apply the principles that initially made me successful in music to other jobs and that, and get a success in them, but never a kind of complete satisfaction. I never knew why I got so much satisfaction sort of out of music, and then I went back to it, and then I thought it's because I can't conquer it, because it's ever changing, it's ever new, and I have to come up with something new for it, and that kind of metamorphosis revitalises me.
Part of that attempt to come to grips and to conquer the music, I guess, would be for a singer-songwriter as yourself. You've always been involved in songwriting, even with the Easybeats, and then with your Stevie Wright band, and Rod Stewart picked up one of the songs.
Rod Stewart...
what was that one again?
Hard Road.
Hard Road, of course.
The title track of the Hard Road album.
Not as good a version as I think the Stevie Wright band did.
Thanks very much.
But still, I mean, that's an acknowledgement for Australian writers generally, and you're still writing material for the new album.
Exactly. Well, I thought that the gift had gone. I hadn't picked it up when I was negligent with my health and activities for about 10 years. I thought that the songwriting talent had gone. And there was nobody around. I got ideas, and I got tapes and tapes of ideas a couple of years ago that just bits of this, that and the other, and there was never anything complete. And then getting involved with the Stevie Wright band gave me a new sense of direction. Yeah. It got me out of, as I call it, Death Valley, which I'm sure, without going into it, all of your listeners know what I mean. And and then to actually get a bonus out of the situation. It wasn't just sort of appearing live and performing material that the people who turned up for the gigs had been aware of for the last 10 to 20 years, or on their radios and that. But it was I found two songwriters in the lineup of the Stevie Wright band that could provide, the kind of basic rock and roll, the kind of full spectrum from the basic sort of gutsy rock and roll that I'm associated with to the sensitive area of an Eevee Part 2. And it's a full spectrum for me. All of a sudden I was given musical things that they'd put down, ideas and that, and all of a sudden I just whacked back into sort of gear, songwriting-wise again.
Right. With your involvement with Harry Vander and George Young in the 60s, and I guess you've kept in touch with them during the 70s and now the reunion concert, of course, how would you like to comment on where their music's going? They're still songwriting? They're still writing songs?
They've got everything. I think they chose a different route to me. As far as the rest of the world's concerned, they are successful. They have the material trappings that we associate with success. But I think personally at this stage, and I'm sure that they won't sort of disagree with me because we've spoken about this, personally they are a little bored because really they've kept out of the grassroots level, that is appearing and performing to people on the street today that are interested in that kind of thing. And I think they're a little bit jaded, and I reckon the Easybeats reunion concerts kind of revitalised them and brought them back to life because they, again, got back in touch with the people.
Are they writing again, do you know?
They're writing again. I believe they're working with John Swan at the moment,
right,
and writing some interesting stuff for him. I hope and keep my fingers crossed that they, as they have done in the past as a team, that they'll come up with some mighty stuff in the future. There's nothing there's nothing more depressing than seeing, people that have done great things in the past that want to do great things, not being able to sort of come up with them. But usually a time limit's involved, and they finally crack it. They get the idea of what's wrong and rectify the situation.
Apart from the Easybeats and the Stevie Wright band, have you got any favourite artists yourself or favourite songs?
No. I've been so busy. I very rarely listen to radio, and when I'm at home, because I work with from the full spectrum of punchy rock material that gives me migraine most of the time if I hear too much of it, to the sensitive material, I usually listen to something completely different when I'm sort of at home. I don't know what,
but nothing in particular. No favourite particular artist.
No specific that I'm over the top with. I think an act that's been around, or an artist that's been around as long as I have, probably did that kind of thing earlier in their career, which I did, and was obsessed with a few artists that heavily influenced me, and I wouldn't listen to anybody else.
Yeah, and who were they?
Ray Charles, obviously. Yeah. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
A lot of the more black American artists. Again, to relate to Easybeats, perhaps a thing that influenced the performance side of it, and might have been originally, I would have gained the influence from perhaps Adelaide, was Eric Bird and Animals.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Who, Easybeats must have sort of been influenced by the things they did. The Kinks were sort of in that era there. They were the most sort of...
Still going too?
Yep.
Still going strong?
Yeah, they were the most potent groups at the time that seemed to sort of be impressing sort of a certain thing on the era that we responded to. Yeah.
Have you made any friends, sort of lifelong friends with any of those guys from overseas?
This business is very fickle. You move fast, you change all the time. It's constant change, and when you do meet interesting people and that, and I've met a lot, toured with the Stones and that, and done business things with some members of the Beatles in the early Easybeat days and that.
Right.
That you get an affinity there that you don't really worry when you see each other. You're blood brothers,
With the concert and everything coming up this weekend, the video's coming on, the album, the live album in particular, and also you've been working on a single which will be released soon.
Yes. Well, it's the whole thing sort of involves this visit to Adelaide, and it's a complete showcase package in the kind of technical capacity that the punters these days would expect it in the thorough professional sort of fields of like the digital recording, 24 track and that.
This will be released on CD as well?
CD too.
Great.
And so
I'll put my order in right now.
Thanks very much, guys. Blow me away.
And I've also got a copy of the double CD Easybeats too, by the way.
Have you really, mate? Well, you're
Fantastic.
doing better than me at this
Great
stage.
stuff.
I've still got my order in.
Fantastic.
I haven't got anything of Easybeats. To go and buy copies to learn my words. I ain't kidding.
Right, the single, Fall For You.
Fall For You was the first song that I got given to me that reintroduced sort of lyrics and melody and that we were talking about before back into my life again after I thought the gift had gone. Eddie Buckelman, the keyboard man in the group, he had a couple of albums, well, a couple of tapes full of material, had no lyrics, no kind of melody lines, just good punchy sort of songs. And it was like when George Young and myself got together again in the early 60s. It's the only thing I can really associate it to.
Mm-hmm.
He was one writer that just used to play, and just pictures, images just used to come up with a story and things, and they're the things that I wrote lyrics for, mm-hmm. and melodies, and they're the things that sort of the Australian audience know Easybeats for.
Right.
She's So Fine, Wedding Ring, Sorry,
yeah, classic. And will Fall For You be on the album?
Fall For You will be on the album.
Right, and released as a single.
And released as a single too. Mm-hmm. Not only Fall For You, but there's a couple of songs, and the interesting part about it is that all the trauma that's sort of gone down over the last 12 months is, and perhaps over the past 12 years, since the last time Stevie Wright recorded, is then captured in the lyrics of these songs, on this new album, without it being a flag-waving type thing. Mm-hmm. And I've kept it really simple. One of the songs is entitled Brothers, and it's basically, there are brothers everywhere. There are some people. What's the lyric now? If I can, there are those who want to be cool. There are those who are nobody's fool. There are those who fight all night. There are those in a terrible plight. There are those without understanding. There are those with an upper hand. There are those in a state of confusion, and there are those in a state of illusion. And then there are brothers. Mm. And they're the people that got me through. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing, you know what I mean? I'm not really flag waving, but I'm writing about things that I think that the man in the street can relate to.
Yeah.
This band, in its as the lineup is today and has been for the last 12 months, I had to piece together, and what I had originally, what I found was 3 players from Perth that had played together in a band previously for about 4 years that played in different bands in Sydney. And I found out just through talking to people, I don't go out very much and socialise and go and see bands very much. Yeah. When I'm not working, I just usually rest. And but I did get to find out that these 3 guys have been associated. Anyway, I put them together and they all said, no, terrible idea, we all play together again. We always fought like cats and dogs, and there's temperament, and it's really fiery, and I thought, that's just what I need. Mm-hmm. I thought, I'm sure that I can
harness all that energy.
Harness all that energy, exactly. That's what I've done. I haven't been able to cancel the temperament. It's a very fiery band. Yeah. You won't believe it. But I did get those 3 together, and there was a level of maturity in there that had been established over the previous 4 years that I had straight away.
Is it going to be just for this album and video? Or
no, this is...
You hope to keep them together for a while?
Well, I have for the last 12 months, and I've made myself and the band go right around doing the grassroots areas of Australia, right from Albany, Western Australia, southwestern Australia, up to Townsville, right, and playing sort of each and every city and town in between, and just out there working on nitty-gritty hard line like I did when Easybeats was first started, you know. And so the band is, it's got that kind of togetherness now that suffering and hard times and good times bring about. It's got that vibe about it, and it's a family vibe and a unity vibe that you just can't get when you put stars together, you know. Yeah. So, that vibe comes out, in the act, and everywhere else we've played, but it's peaking. It's been brought to a sort of a steady kind of a peak. It's had to be paced because I've known that this kind of Adelaide situation, where it's going to be filmed and videoed and recorded, obviously needs to be the kind of peak of the whole thing.
Why was Adelaide chosen?
Originally stated because it's a rock and roll town, and the promoter comes from Adelaide, right? Yeah. And it's always been a damn good audience for me in anything I've been associated with in the past. And And last time we played Adelaide, Adelaide's already seen the origination of the Stevie Wright band, but not the maturity in it. And they've got 12 months maturity now, and they're really firing.
As far as the bands that you've worked with in the past, and including the one you're working with now, some advice for newcomers who are starting up their bands in the 80s. Are there any ingredients in all of the bands that you've been in that are really essential for any band to really get going? Can you give us some advice?
Well, the word KISS explains it all. Keep it simple, silly.
Keep it simple, right, yeah. Is that the tendency, do you think, of some of the 80s bands to get too complicated?
Well, the tendency there is because of the, like the
technology.
Technology's gone, like far ahead, and people think, wow, it's all, but it's not. It's like use all that in a simple way.
Yeah, right. We're into the 80s now, almost to the end of the 80s. What's Stevie Wright going to be doing in the 90s?
Oh, mate.
No thoughts yet, or just taking it as it comes?
I don't think that I think that the third decade, kind of in a row, if established, will probably be the end of me sort of being a performer. I can see that the training that Harry Vander and George Young previously sort of put me in, as far as business kind of things, is I worked for the Alberts company that I originally recorded with for 2 years as product manager, so I found out the ins and outs of the record business and business management, right? And I always found it such a bore, and all I wanted to do was get out there and rock. But I can see now that that there'll come a day, I don't know when it'll be, but there'll come a day when I'll probably drift into that kind of work and help sort of oncoming artists that have probably got far more to say at that period in their life than I will at my period in my life at that stage.
Stevie, with the concert that's coming up this weekend, some of the material you said you're going to be doing is spanning probably, 25 years of your working. Can you give us some of the songs?
Well, it does, Gary. It does. It spans 25 years. It's hard to kind of realise that when I look in the mirror these days, but it has gone on that long. And yes, what I try to do to an audience is, or for an audience, is exactly what I'd expect if I was a paid-up punter too. Right. Coming there with my lady or whatever, and seeing a show, and I'd expect to see the kind of thing that I do, and what I do is provide the best of the stuff that's been related to audiences from the Easybeats era. Obviously, I'll make you happy, stuff that's been covered by other bands. I'll make you happy, Sorry, Wedding Ring, She's So Fine. You can run the gamut through Easybeat material, the best stuff that you've heard, and it'll be included in the act. And then I can go into the 70s and do the Evie trilogy, which is still magic to me because it contains 3 emotional kind of levels. It's good for a singer to get in there. It's not just one and just start here, finish there, see you at the end.
What's the whole length of the 3 put together? I've never heard all 3 put together.
It goes 11 minutes.
Oh, I thought it was much longer than that.
No, I'm surprised.
14, 15 minutes,
You didn't know that, Gary, because a lot of DJs picked that track up and put it on the air playlist so that they could go and have a wash.
Yeah, right.
In the old days. Yeah, and so we do the Evie trilogy, guitar band from the 70s, Black Eyed Bruiser, which is always a big favourite with the blokes. And then the new stuff from the 80s now, which seems to be going really well. I never used to like to play new stuff to an audience that they'd never heard before, they weren't familiar with. Right. It was all right if it was even a good cover, but not completely new. I used to think it bored audiences with. But I say, well, throw things at the stage if you don't like this one, and say, because this is a newie, and I don't usually do this, but we've stuck in newies and they've been going. They've been tried and tested in the last sort of. In the last month in Sydney and New South Wales concerts and that, and they're just going over mighty, the ones I've chosen for the Adelaide set,
Great, terrific. Well, we wish you all the best for the weekend. It's going to be, sounds like a fantastic concert.
I'll get you a video.
But I know there'll be a lot of people there, and I wouldn't be surprised if you had to turn a lot of people away at the door. So I'd suggest that everybody's going to see Stevie Wright and his band, get there early, get your place, and I know you're not going to be disappointed.
Well, the audience are going to be film stars too.
Of course, yeah. They'll be from all over Adelaide, probably. All the best, Stevie, anyway, and good luck for the weekend. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Gary.